Let me tell you a story that still makes my heart heavy sometimes, but also fills it with hope. I'm 73 years old now, and I've seen enough of life to know that what goes around truly does come around. My name is Margaret, and this is about the hardest lesson I ever had to learn about family, betrayal, and forgiveness. I raised my daughter Sarah all by myself after her father walked out when she was just 3 years old. Those were the toughest years of my life. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and working at a grocery store during the day, just to keep food on our table and a roof over our heads. Sarah was everything to me. She was my whole world. I remember those cold winter mornings when I'd wake up at 4:30 to get ready for work. I'd peek into Sarah's room and watch her sleeping peacefully, her dark hair spread across the pillow like silk. I'd whisper a little prayer asking God to help me be strong enough for both of us. Then I'd tiptoe to the kitchen and make her lunch for school, always trying to pack something special, maybe a little note or her favorite cookies if I had managed to save enough money. The years passed, and I watched Sarah grow into a beautiful, smart young woman. She got good grades, had friends, and seemed happy despite our struggles. When she graduated high school, I was so proud I cried right there in the auditorium. All those years of sacrifice felt worth it in that moment. Sarah got accepted to college, and even though money was tight, I was determined to help her. I took out loans, worked extra hours, and even sold my mother's old jewelry, the only valuable things I owned. I wanted Sarah to have opportunities I never had. I wanted her to have a better life than mine. During college, Sarah met David. He came from a wealthy family, and I could see how that world fascinated her. When she brought him home the first time, I noticed how she seemed almost embarrassed by her little apartment, by my worn-out furniture, and the way I had to count every penny. But I pushed those thoughts away. I told myself she was just nervous about introducing her boyfriend. After college, Sarah married David in a beautiful ceremony that his parents paid for. I felt so out of place among all those fancy people, but I was happy for my daughter. She looked radiant in her white dress, and I thought about all the nights I dreamed of this day while working my fingers to the bone. They moved into a big house in an expensive neighborhood, and David got Sarah a job at his father's company. Suddenly, my daughter had everything: designer clothes, expensive cars, vacations to places I could only dream of. I was happy for her. Truly, I was. This was what I had worked so hard for, wasn't it? But slowly, things started to change between us. Sarah's visits became less frequent. When she did come by, she seemed uncomfortable, like she couldn't wait to leave. She'd look around my apartment with this expression I couldn't quite read, and she'd check her phone constantly. Our conversations became shorter and more distant. I tried to ignore the growing gap between us. I told myself she was just busy with her new life, that this was normal. But deep down, I could feel her slipping away from me, and it broke my heart. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was making dinner for one as usual. Sarah called, and for a moment, I felt that old happiness hearing her voice. But something was different. She sounded nervous, almost cold. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." "Of course, honey. What is it?" There was a long pause. And then she said words that felt like a knife through my heart. "David's family is concerned about appearances. They think it would be better if you didn't come around so much. Maybe it's time for you to move somewhere more suitable." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean, Sarah?" "I mean,
Maybe you should consider moving to one of those senior communities. David found a nice place about 2 hours away. It's clean and safe, and you'd be with people your own age. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Sarah, this is my home. I've lived here for 30 years. All of my memories of raising you are here. Mom, please try to understand. David's father is considering him for a promotion, and having family who don't fit in with their social circle could hurt his chances. I sat down heavily in my old recliner, the one I'd saved for months to buy when she was in high school. Are you ashamed of me, Sarah? It's not about shame. It's about what's practical. The place David found is really nice. They have activities and meal plans. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. But I could hear it in her voice. She was ashamed. Ashamed of the woman who had given everything for her, who had worked herself to exhaustion to gather a better life. I was now an embarrassment, something to be hidden away. I won't go, Sarah. This is my home. Our boys got harder then, more like us strangers than my daughters. Mom, be reasonable. You're getting older. What if something happens to you? The decision's made. David already put a deposit down. We'll help you pack this weekend. And then she hung up. Just like that. 30 years of love and sacrifice dismissed in a 10-minute phone call. I sat in that chair for hours, crying like I hadn't cried since her father left. But these tears were different. They came from a deeper place, from the realization that the person I loved most in the world saw me as nothing more than an inconvenience. That weekend, Sarah came with David and some movers. She wouldn't look me in the eye as they packed up my life into boxes. I watched them handle my things carelessly, stuff that had meaning and memory attached to every piece. When they took down the photo of Sarah's graduation day, I started crying again. Please don't make this harder than it has to be, Sarah said, but she still wouldn't look at me. The senior community turned out to be a rundown nursing home 2 hours away from everything and everyone I know. My room was tiny, with thin walls and a view of the parking lot. The food was terrible, and most of the other residents were much sicker than I was. I felt like I was in prison. For months, I was the loneliest I'd ever been in my life. Sarah called once a week, brief conversations where she asked if I was settling in okay and told me about her wonderful new life. She never visited. She always had some excuse. Work was busy. They were traveling. David was stressed out his promotion. I fell into a deep depression. I stopped eating properly and barely got out of bed. The nurses were concerned, but I didn't care. What was the point? The person I'd lived for had thrown me away like garbage. But then something unexpected happened. I met Rose. Rose was the activity coordinator at the facility, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a warm smile. She had been trying to get me to join the activities for weeks, and I'd been refusing. But one day, she sat down next to me in the common room and said something that changed everything. You know, Margaret, I could see the sadness in your eyes. I've worked here for 15 years, and I've seen that look before. Someone you love hurt you deeply, didn't they? I started crying right there, and the whole story came pouring out. Rose listened without judgment, just nodding and offering me tissues when I needed them. Rose said, "This happens more than I wish it did. Children who forget where they came from, who they owe their success to. But let me tell you something. This isn't about you. This is about them losing their way." Rose convinced me to start helping with activities. At first, I didn't want to, but she was persistent in the kindest way. Soon, I was helping other residents write letters, teaching some of the ladies how to knit, and even organizing little parties for birthdays. Slowly, I started to heal. I made friends with other residents, people who had their own stories of heartbreak and resilience. There was Henry, whose son never called, and Dorothy, whose daughter only visited when she needed money. We formed our own little family of forgotten parents.
Meanwhile, through our weekly phone calls, I heard about Sarah's life. David got his promotion, and they moved to an even bigger house. Sarah was pregnant with their first child. She told me this news like she was telling me about the weather, with no emotion or excitement in sharing it with her mother. "That's wonderful, honey," I said, trying to keep the sadness out of my voice. "I'm so happy for you." "Thanks, Mom. Listen, I have to go. David's parents are coming for dinner." She didn't invite me to the baby shower. She didn't ask if I wanted to be involved in preparing for my grandchild. I heard about my grandson's birth 3 days after he was born, in another one of those brief, cold phone calls. "We named him Michael," she said. "He's healthy and beautiful." "I'd love to meet him, Sarah." "Maybe when he's older, Mom. Babies are so fragile, and with all the germs in those places." Another excuse, another door snapped in my face. But life has a way of teaching lessons to those who need to learn them, and karma was about to make its appearance in Sarah's perfect world. It started with David's promotion. The success went to his head, and he started staying out late, coming home drunk, and treating Sarah badly. During one of our phone calls, I could hear the strain in her voice, though she tried to hide it. "Is everything okay, honey?" I asked. "Everything's fine, Mom. Just tired. Michael's been keeping me up at night." But I could tell it wasn't just the baby. There was something broken in her voice, something familiar. It was the same tone I'd heard in my own voice all those years ago, when her father was treating me badly. Then David lost his job. It turned out he'd been embezzling money from his father's company to fund his gambling addiction. The scandal was huge in their social circle. All those people who had looked down on me were now gossiping about Sarah and her husband. Sarah called me one night, crying for the first time in years. "Mom, I don't know what to do. David gambled away our savings. We're going to lose the house. His parents won't even talk to us anymore." For a moment, I felt vindicated. This was karma, I thought. This was what she deserved for treating me the way she did. But as I listened to my daughter sob on the phone, holding her baby while her world fell apart, my mother's heart broke for her. "What do you need, Sarah?" "I need help, Mom. I know I don't deserve it after how I treated you, but I had nowhere else to go." There it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. But hearing it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. David left them a week later, taking what little money they had left and disappearing. Sarah was alone with baby Michael, just like I had been alone with her all those years ago. The difference was she had a mother who remembered what unconditional love meant. Rose helped me contact a lawyer to get Sarah and Michael moved closer to where I was. I used the little money I had saved to help them rent a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was clean and safe. When Sarah walked into my room at the nursing home with Michael in her arms, I saw my daughter clearly for the first time in years. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked younger, more like the girl I raised. But most importantly, I saw shame in her eyes. Real shame.
Not the embarrassment she'd felt about me, but the deep shame that comes from knowing you've hurt someone who loved you unconditionally. "Mom," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I was horrible to you. You gave me everything, and I threw it back in your face." I stood up from my chair and walked over to her. Michael looked up at me with curious eyes, and I felt my heart melt. He had Sarah's dark hair and my late husband's green eyes. "Let me hold my grandson," I said softly. I let the light go in my arms. Sarah collapsed into the chair and sobbed like her heart was breaking. And maybe it was. Sometimes hearts have to break so they can heal properly. I was so caught up in trying to fit into David's world. I thought I was better than where I came from. I thought I was better than you, Mom. But I was wrong. So very wrong. I sat down next to her, still holding Michael. "We all make mistakes, honey. The important thing is learning from them. How can you forgive me after everything I did to you?" I looked at my grandson, sleeping peacefully in my arms, and then at my daughter, broken but finally honest. Because that's what mothers do, Sarah. We love our children, even when they hurt us, even when they forget who they are and where they came from. Over the next few months, Sarah and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. She visited me every day, bringing Michael with her. The other residents fell in love with the baby, and it brought joy to that sad place in a way I never expected. Sarah got a job with local data, working hard just like I had when she was little. Some nights she'd come to visit me with flour in her hair and exhaustion in her eyes, and I'd see myself in her. Life had come full circle. "I understand now, Mom," she said one evening as we watched Michael play with some toys on my bed. "I understand what you went through raising me alone. I understand the sacrifice you made." "You don't have to go through it alone," I told her. "That's the difference. You have me." Rose helped me apply for a compassionate release from the nursing home. Since I wasn't really sick and had family who could care for me, they agreed to go. Sarah and I found a small 2-bedroom apartment that we could live together. It wasn't much, but it was clean and safe. When Sarah walked into my room at the nursing home with Michael in her arms, I saw my daughter clearly for the first time in years. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked younger, more like the girl I raised. But most importantly, I saw shame in her eyes. Real shame. Not the embarrassment she felt about me, but the deep shame that comes from knowing you've hurt someone who loved you unconditionally. "Mom," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I was horrible to you. You gave me everything. I threw it back in your face." I stood up from my chair and walked over to her. Michael looked up at me with curious eyes, and I felt my heart melt. He had Sarah's dark hair and my late husband's green eyes. "Let me hold my grandson," I said softly. As I took Michael in my arms, Sarah collapsed into the chair and sobbed like her heart was breaking. And maybe it was. Sometimes hers have to break before they can heal properly. I was so caught up in trying to fit into David's world. I thought I was better than where I came from. I thought I was better than you, Mom. But I was wrong. So very wrong. I sat down next to her, still holding Michael. We all make mistakes, honey. The important thing is learning from them. How can you forgive me after everything I did to you? I looked at my princess sleeping peacefully in my arms, and then my daughter, broken but finally honest. Because that's what mothers do, Sarah. We love our children, even when they hurt us, even when they forget who they are and where they came from. Over the next few months, Sarah and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. She visited me every day, bringing Michael with her. The other residents fell in love with the baby, and he brought joy to the sad ways in a way I never expected. Sarah got a job at the local diner, working hard just like I had when she was little. Some night she comes to visit me with a flower in her hair and exhaustion in her eyes, and I see myself in her. Life had come full circle. I understand now, she said one evening as he watched Michael play with some toys on my bed.
I understand what you went through raising me alone. I understand the sacrifice you made. You don't have to go through it alone, I told her. That's the difference. You have me. Rose helped me apply for a compassionate release from the nursing home. Since I wasn't really sick and had family who could care for me, they agreed to let me go. Sarah and I found a small 2-bedroom apartment where we could all live together. It wasn't the life any of us had planned, but it was real in a way that Sarah's perfect suburban life never had been. We cooked simple meals together, took turns getting up with Michael at night, and slowly became a family again. Sarah learned to budget and save money. She learned the value of hard work and honest living. Most importantly, she learned that love isn't about what someone can give you materially. It's about showing up, being present, and never giving up on each other. One day, about a year after Sarah and Michael moved in with me, we were at the park watching Michael take his first steps. Sarah turned to me with tears in her eyes. I wasted so much time being ashamed of the wrong things, she said. I should have been ashamed of my ingratitude, my selfishness, my cruelty to you. Instead, I was ashamed of the woman who sacrificed everything for me. I watched Michael toddle toward us, his little arms outstretched and a huge smile on his face. The past is the past, honey. What matters is now, and now we're together. As I write this story, Sarah and I have been living together for 3 years. She's now the assistant manager at the diner and is saving money to go back to school. Michael is 4 years old and calls me Nana in the sweetest voice you've ever heard. Sarah never remarried, though she's dated some nice men. She says she's in no hurry. She's focused on being a good mother and a good daughter, on building a life based on real values instead of appearances. We still live simply, but our home is filled with love and laughter. Michael's toys are scattered around our small living room, and Sarah's textbooks are stacked on the kitchen table where she studies after he goes to bed. It's not glamorous, but it's genuine. Sometimes I think about those years when Sarah was married to David, living in that big house, surrounded by expensive things, but empty of real love. I think about how miserable she must have been, even if she couldn't admit it to herself at the time. Karma didn't come back to punish Sarah. It came back to save her. It stripped away all the false things in her life and left her with what really mattered: family, love, and the chance to become the person she was meant to be. The other day, Michael was playing with his toy cars on the floor while Sarah and I folded laundry. Out of nowhere, he looked up at me and said, "Nana, Mommy says you're the strongest person in the whole world." I looked at Sarah, and she smiled at me with so much love in her eyes.
"That's right, baby," she said to Michael. "Nana taught Mommy how to be strong, too." People sometimes ask me if I'm bitter about those years when Sarah turned her back on me. They want to know if I'm angry about the time we've lost, the pain she caused me. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. I'm grateful because going through that darkness brought us to this light. I'm grateful because Sarah had to lose everything to find what really mattered. I'm grateful because now she knows the difference between love and convenience, between family and social status. Most of all, I'm grateful because now I know that the love that I poured into her all those years wasn't wasted. It was there all along, buried under fear and false priorities, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Karma isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about redemption. Sometimes it's about getting a second chance to do things right. Sometimes it's about finding your way back home. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, home finds its way back to you too.
As I watch Sarah read bedtime stories to Michael using the same gentle voice I used to read to her, I know that love really does win in the end. It might take a long, painful journey to get there, but love always finds a way. That's the lesson I want to leave you with. No matter how much someone hurts you, if there's real love there, it's worth fighting for. It's worth forgiving for. It's worth waiting for. Because in the end, love is all we really have, and it's more than enough.